Dave Hart, not only do you work with a Beatle in Ringo Starr, you've been his agent since 2004, but you worked with some of the icons in our business, including the promoter, Bill Graham. Tell us a little bit about your humble beginnings with him.
Well, Bill was an amazing character. There's no doubt about it. I was going to NYU Film School, which was downtown Manhattan, and the writing school was right next to the Fillmore. A friend of mine got the job at the Fillmore East as an usher, and he needed somebody to fill out his crew, and he asked me to join him. And I had a great love of rock and roll, so for me it was perfect. And went in there at 6 o'clock in the evening on a Friday and didn't come out till the Sunday, and just was in rock and roll heaven. But a couple of weeks later, we had an argument with Bill about pay, and I became the spokesman. I don't know why. But I was the first one to stand up and explain why we should get more money. It was a run of Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young shows. And there's only one show a night. Normally there were two shows. And when we got two shows, we got $15 and they were only going to pay us $7.50. So I stood up and they say, our expenses are the same. And then I sat down. And the next day, Bill called me into the office and said, congratulations, you got the raise. I went, great. And then he said, how would you like a job? I said, sure. He said, you want to go to San Francisco? I said, nah, I don't want to go to San Francisco. I got a girlfriend here. I just got an apartment. Blah, 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 blah. He said, fine, go upstairs, see Herb Spar. There was an office building that was attached to the Fillmore. I went up the stairs, went past Emily Rothschild's photo office. She's a famous photographer. I went past Mark Spector, management, who managed a bunch of artists, and then ended up at Millard Agency, Millard Fillmore. And Millard at that point represented Billy Joel, the Beach Boys, Butterfield Blues Band, Janis Joplin, Santana. It was just spectacular. I sat down with the guy who ran it, Herb Spar, who had just been brought over from William Morris. He liked me. I liked him. I knew a bit about English rock and roll. He hired me. The next day I was on the phone selling.
What a roster.
Come on.
What a roster to start out with. And I mean, I think the most important part of that story is that you won an argument against Bill Graham in the realm of money, something pertaining to dollars. That's pretty crazy. And then he really appreciated your initiative, which is probably what got you the job, because he knew that you had the stones to stand up to him.
And he treated me like a son to a certain extent. We became good friends. I went to him for advice frequently. He tried to hire me for a Rolling Stones tour. I turned it down, probably a big mistake, but I did.
What role did he want you to play on that tour? What was he looking to hire you for the Stones?
On the Stones tour? I have no idea what the job was. A guy named Chip Racklin, who was actually one of the guys at Millard, more senior than me, got the job. And frankly, I didn't know what the job was. That's one of the reasons I didn't take it. I was scared, and get out there on the road and not know what I was doing, because I hadn't had much road experience. Most of my experience at that point was booking. I had a place called the Capitol Theater in Passaic, New Jersey, that I was an assistant talent buyer on. And so when he offered me the job, I wasn't secure, so I didn't take it. I probably did okay with that, because I jumped from the Capitol Theater to the Garden State Art Center, which was an outdoor shed. And one of the first ones. This is 1981. And as you know, the shed business exploded. So
yes.
3 years later, I'm running the Nederlander sheds across the country, which was really exciting. Pine Knob in Detroit, Poplar Creek in Chicago, and Meriwether Post in between Washington and Baltimore, and helping with the Greek Theater and Pacific Amphitheater on the West Coast. It was just an amazing, exciting job. I did that from 84 to 90.
And that's one of the most unique things about you. You've worked as a manager. You managed Lewis Black for a while, the comedian. You have worked as a talent buyer at the highest level possible, as an agent at a high level. You have fulfilled all of these different roles. And do you feel like that's refined your skills to make you an even better agent?
Yeah, I would like to think so. I'd like to think that I could promote a show tomorrow and know all the details necessary. I'd like to think that I could manage an artist, which I do. We have about 5, 6 artists on our list. I'd like to think I could be an agent for an artist. I know I am right now for a number of artists, but actually act more as a tour producer than an agent. Yeah, having those skills, Jim, in all those areas certainly helps. It certainly helps. Going into a settlement with a promoter, I know what his side of the fence is. Going into a deal with a record company, I know what a manager's supposed to say. Going into a deal with Bill Graham, I know to be afraid. Bill
Here's some
Graham followed
wisdom.
me. He followed me, and he called me up once in a while and say, "Dave, how you doing?" But he told me one thing. He said, "Dave, the most important job I have is a manager." He says, "When I'm a promoter, I can call, an agent or a manager, and they might pick up my call. When I'm an agent, right, which he had been, at times he ran Millard, oversaw Millard. I can call a manager, and he might pick up my call. He doesn't have to. But if I'm a manager and I call either an agent or a promoter, my phone call gets picked up." So it left an impression on me. And being a manager is an important and exciting part of the business, and you're closer to the artist than anybody else. And for that reason, it can be more fulfilling.
Right.
Not to
No,
denigrate you as a promoter, Jim.
no, and we wear multiple hats here too, but I understand what you're saying, and one story I'll share between you and I. The first time you and I worked together on a Ringo Starr date, you knew exactly down to the dollar how profitable that show had been that night because you made a very quick estimate based on what you saw in the audience, how active the bar lines were. It was something to behold. So it's almost become instinctual to you at this point in your life because you've been at it for a while.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But knowing a building, having worked for both the Nederlanders and then subsequently MCA Concerts, which was a precursor to House of Blues Concerts, which is a precursor to Live Nation, and knowing what it took in these buildings to be successful, how many cars you had to park, how much beer you had to do, especially as the deals got tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. Thanks to Howard Rose
Yes.
and Jimmy Buffett. But it was certainly a constant learning experience because as things got tighter, you had to figure out how to make money.
Let's talk a little bit just quickly about Howard Rose and how that initiative of knowing that they controlled the content that would really move the tickets and fill these amphitheaters really switched the business from what it was to what it became, really evolved it. So Howard Rose sort of took the stance that if you were going to fill these sheds all summer long, you needed headliners. And if you needed headliners, you were going to pay a premium for them. And was it him or was it Jimmy Buffett who came up with the 110% of the gross deal?
In my initial experience with Nederlander, I started in 1984, and we
Yes.
offered a deal with no guarantee and a percentage deal, 50-50 to 50 on the gross, 60-40 to 250, and 70 above. No guarantee. And a lot of people liked that deal. And of course, the surcharge always got in the way of some of the negotiations. But during that time frame, we also had subscriptions. So at Pine Knob, for instance, we would have 10 different subscriptions. One would have Huey Lewis as the headliner. One would have Jimmy Buffett as the headliner. One would have Whitney Houston as the headliner, so on and so forth. And they were all sort of, Whitney Houston would be an R&B list. Huey Lewis would be a pop rock list, so on and so forth. So an artist like Jimmy Buffett that generated so many ticket sales and so much excitement, Howard Rose took a look at the subscription and say, "I got you. You need my
Right.
artist to run that subscription." And he was dead right. So by the time we got to 1990, he was in that position of dictating what he wanted, and that would help me sell the rest of those shows on that subscription. When I
Right.
got to the MCA buildings, which was Starplex in Dallas and Coca-Cola Amphitheater in Atlanta and Blossom in Cleveland. And I helped a little with Toronto, but we didn't have subscriptions. So it became act by act. And in those cases, Howard could be really, very intense when it came to Jimmy, but would back off a little when it came to Dan Fogelberg.
Right. Well, he understood that he understood in these subscription situations that if you have a bunch of, say, B plus, B minus, and B level artists, you really wanted to sell out that subscription. You needed a few A plus level players within it in order to sell the whole thing out. So it was smart, and it probably laid the groundwork for the mega ticket concept that Live Nation still uses today in a lot of those amphitheaters.
The mega ticket concept, and it sounds terrible. But I understand, right? It's
a working model. Yeah, for sure. So now, when you met Ringo, it was around 1989, if I remember correctly, and you were actually a promoter at that time, right?
I was with Nederlander.
Right.
And I had done business with the fellow who put together the first Ringo and his All Stars band. As a matter of fact, he called me up and said, I just signed Ringo Starr. What do I do? And I said, put together an all-star band, and I'll give you 5 shows. So I gave him 5 shows: Pine Knob, Poplar Creek, Merriweather Post, the Greek and Pacific Amphitheater. And that money gave him the basis to do the rest of the tour. And it was very successful. And he had a party just before the tour. So I went and met Ringo and his lawyer, Bruce Graycow, lovely cat, who I still have a great friendship with. And we did those 5, 6 shows. And then when Ringo came back out in 92, we did it again. 91. 93, we did it again. 95, we did it again. 97, I was working for a company called Magic. And Bruce Cap and I bought the whole tour, and with the idea of buying the whole package tour and then reselling it and getting a sponsor. When we did the tour, we then found out that the fellow who had produced it had already made a sponsorship deal, which cut that out, and also had hired an agent, Rob Prinz at CAA. We had to remove him, which is not a pleasant thing to do. You can imagine.
Oh, I can imagine.
Rob is a friend, but back then it was an uncomfortable situation.
Was that the tour that Glade? Was it Glade that sponsored that one?
Yeah, it was the tour that didn't stink. That's correct.
right. Great name for it. Internally, of course. And then, how many dates did you actually buy on that?
25.
So you bought the summer.
Yeah, bought the whole summer. And the shows were good. The band was great. It had Frampton on guitar and Jack Bruce on bass and Simon Kirk on drums. And Mark Rivera, who is now with Billy Joel, was on the saxophone, was the musical director. That band was cooking, and it was a lot of fun. We didn't make enough money, honestly. We should have made more, but it was fun, and it established a relationship with Bruce and with Ringo. So that in 2004, I was at House of Blues concerts, and they wanted to change the producer position. And so Bruce Graycow called me and said, "Can you do this?" I said, "Are you kidding me? What a fabulous thing." And the part of the producer responsibility was to help Ringo put the band together, because his band would change pretty frequently.
Right.
So having had a history of rock and roll in my brain and in my heart and in my ears, I was able to give him some great band members. And then we started touring a lot more because he was really comfortable with the band. And that was a complete fulfillment of a long career.
And you still help Ringo assemble the composition of his band to this day, correct? Like you provide him with suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong; it's his decision. But I submit him a list of 3 bass players and 3 guitar players, rhythm, and 3 lead guitar players, and so on and so forth. In the last couple of years, I haven't had to do that because we have a band that he really loves, and we stick with it. The band that had Edgar Winter and Rick Derringer, that one lasted for a number of years. And then we have Steve Lukather and Greg Raleigh and
Richard Page
and Todd Rundgren. That one lasted for a 5-year run. Now we have Colin Hay and Hamish Stewart. in the bass and the rhythm guitar space, and it's just so much fun. These guys are talented and fun and easy to get along with. An amazing payout at the end of a long career. I
Now,
shouldn't say that. I got a ways to
it's
go.
yeah, absolutely you do. You've got a pretty good health regime on the go too, which is nice to see. But as it pertains to the band itself, so you've got a really unique challenge in that you're compiling an all-star band. So even though all the players are best in show players, they're all sublime. How much prioritization is given to whether or not that particular musician is also a draw in their own right versus their musicianship? Like what wins out in the end for you?
The initial feeling is that Ringo sells the tickets. People
Right.
want to see Ringo. They want to hear "Little Help from My Friends." They want to hear a photograph. Of the 24 songs in a show, 12, 13 will be Ringo's. The other 12, 13 will be the rest of the bands. Each member will get maybe two cuts. It ultimately doesn't make that much difference. What it makes a difference is the quality of the show that comes out. None of them are they're all fabulous musicians to begin with, and none of the songs are mysteries. The audience all knows them. Ringo says it's the best jukebox show in the world, and I agree with him. People really enjoy the show, and Ringo loves playing with the other guys. He
Right.
gets up there behind the drums, and he'll be playing drums on Black Magic Woman, and you'll see the delight that comes through him, just glows from him, because he enjoys doing other people's songs and enjoys the songs themselves and the experience of working with the other band members. It's just great.
It's a tremendous show. I remember both in Penticton and Hawaii when we were involved in promoting them. You get to see Ringo shine as the front man, which is a role that he's very comfortable in. But like you just said, he also gets to get behind a kit and perform smash hits from, Mr. Mister and these iconic songs from Santana. And it must be so fulfilling to him as well, because I think when artists start to get into their late 70s, early 80s, people go, why are you still doing it? And a lot of times the answer is purely financial. But in Ringo's case, it seems like he's really enjoying it.
Yeah, he doesn't need to do it under any circumstances. He does not need to do it. He probably is the most successful drummer in the world right now, overall. But he does it because he loves the music and he loves playing with the band, and that's just great. A couple of years ago, we had the bass player from 10cc and brought new songs to the show, and that stimulated him. Really, he just was wow. I'm playing the Things We Do for Love, or I'm Not in Love. Those songs, those iconic songs, and it put new juice into him. And then we brought back Hamish Stewart, and now he's doing the Average White Band songs, which are sort of disco-y, sort of R&B disco-y. And again, the juice is flowing, and it's just exciting to see
Oh, that's great.
somebody of that. I mean, Ringo's an icon. You listen to the Beatles songs, and you hear the stuff that he does time and again. It's so extraordinary. The difference he makes in the song and the way he plays the drums. And I'm not blowing smoke up him, right now. I'm just telling the truth. He's just spectacular, and it's so much fun to watch him night after night when you go out on tour. That's what I miss. We just finished a make believe tour that got canceled because of coronavirus, and it's going to be replayed next June. But it was a tough June for me, sitting here at home rather than being out on the road with the boss.
Yeah, he's a rock god, no doubt about it. And it's
Yeah.
so cool to see your enthusiasm after all these years. I mean, you've been working with the guy now for a decade and a half plus, but you can still see the excitement on your face and hear it in your voice when you talk about how great the show is,
Mhm.
which is not exactly common in this business, right? I think we get focused on the commerce, we get focused on how difficult aspects of the business are, and our we lose we lose the memory of what drew us to the business in the first place, which was our love for music. Now, Interesting fact about you: when you were at NYU as a film student, your professor was Martin Scorsese, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Yep.
And yet you
Marty.
couldn't wait to get out of that class and go spend time at the Fillmore East.
Making film is a long, arduous, painful job,
Tedious.
in my opinion. Yeah, tedious. The writing, I was okay with writing, but it just takes, looking at an empty piece of paper and a typewriter back then was a painful thing. Editing back then was a painful thing. It's now a lot easier with electronic video. Marty was a fine teacher. He was a great film history teacher, but I hated him for production. People who understand, I always got the Bell and Howell instead of the Araflex when it came to making these little movies that we made, and he never gave me a grade over a B minus for the 6 movies that I made in the 2 years that I was in the production class with him. So I knew I did the right thing for me. I did the right thing. For right now, I'm kicking myself because if I had made movies, I might be getting some money in the mailbox. But instead, live concerts and the idea of watching people get so exciting about what's going on stage and having something to do with that still really rings my bell. That's the most exciting thing for me. You see 2,500 people just stand up and go nuts when an artist that and had something to do with come out to the front of the stage and sing a song that they grew up with. It gives me chills to think about it right now. So
and it's just so important to reconnect with that feeling because, like I say, I think it gets lost sometimes after years and years and years in the business. And the fact that you still retain that after all you've accomplished, all you've proven, still keeps you motivated to move forward. So what's next? We got Ringo going out on tour in 2021. Obviously, we're doing some Canadian dates, but you're mapping out a worldwide tour or a North American wide tour?
We're going to do North America in June and going to do Canada and Mexico in September, October. Hopefully, one of the shows would be the Global Citizen Festival show in New York City. But that remains to be seen whether or not 40,000 people can get together. The thing that I always did with Ringo was, from a promoter point of view, increase the ticket price and lower the capacity. Instead of playing the sheds, my focus was always theaters or small outdoor venues. I wanted to make it a special situation for a limited number of people. And because Ringo is such an icon, that we'll be able to crank up the ticket price and people can afford it. And also the demo that goes to see him could afford it. And maybe they could afford to lay out $100 for their kid to sit next to them, because a lot of the kids now want to see him. But the idea was to put him into 25 to 3,500 seat theaters and have him and the band really blow those kind of audiences away. 9 times out of 10, that's what we did. Occasionally, we would go into an outdoor amphitheater or another kind of venue, maybe an arena once in a while. But most of them were in the smaller theaters, and that formula worked year after year after year. He got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and we able to get into other venues. But keeping it small and keeping it focused and having people really be excited. The other thing, if you charge $200 for a gold circle ticket, you're taking a risk. But if you know that the show that's delivered is just a powerhouse show, you have all the confidence in the world to deliver that to promoters. So that's
right.
what we do. Yeah.
Now, given what the coronavirus epidemic has done to the economy, are you revisiting that strategy or revising that strategy for the tour moving forward? Because the idea of raising the ticket every time makes a lot of sense, especially when you're dealing with a finite resource, which at this point, you could say a Ringo Starr all-star band show is a finite resource. He's not going to tour for another 2 decades. We know that.
Uh-huh.
So I get the desire to want to monetize that maximally, but we've also got other factors at play now. And so how is that playing into your decision-making process and your strategy?
I'm very optimistic. I think that when and if the vaccine comes in, which I'm looking for next January, and it's effective, by the time June runs around, the tour that we had in June had already been on sale and had sold 75 to 80% of the tickets. In the theater situations, we were close to sold out. A lot of them. We offered refunds, so there were some refunds for people who needed the money. But by the time next June runs around, uh, there should be a re-up of the people who can afford to go to could afford to go to the show initially, and that there might be the positive feeling about coming back in the world, with people going back to work and not having to worrying about dying when they go to work. Um,
Right.
I think the money's going to come back. I think the audience will come back. I think a lot of people still have resources. They have to decide where they're going to spend their resources. But if work comes back starting the beginning of next year, I think by next June, a year from now, people are going to be happy and excited to go out and spend time rubbing shoulders with another 2,900 people and enjoying the power that brings. Uh-oh, I'm running out of battery here. So
Oh,
that's what I'm hoping for.
right.
If it doesn't work, we'll revamp. In the meantime, from my point of view, I'm managing a bunch of artists. We're in the studio with Edgar Winter, making a tribute to Johnny. We're in the studio with an artist named Jalen Josie, a fabulous young singer, and that's going to be out soon. Um, we have a number of artists. Allison Porter, who won The Voice 3 years ago, she's looking to go back in the studio. Just did a great record last year, and a number of artists that we have. So that's more on the management side. And then I represent a fabulous singer named Linda Eder. I act as her tour producer agent, and she's always going into the studio and doing stuff. She's a real Broadway icon, and life is good. It's still a lot of fun and very exciting to do all this.
Now, are you booking those artists in addition to managing them, or have you outsourced some of the booking and just focused on management?
UTA represents a number of the artists that I manage.
Right.
In the case of Linda, I act as like a tour or a concert producer for her. Not really an agent, although I'll accept offers in those situations. Um, and most of the management situations, I look for an agent to help me in that regard. I have a great relationship with UTA, Neil Warnock, and David Strunk.
Another
And
legend.
yeah, and those are people I've known and really enjoy working with. So Edgar, especially UTA, really helps me out with Edgar Winter. And Edgar is now in the studio with Portugal the Man and doing a record with a single with them for their new record, which is a big deal. And he's also in the studio making this record for the Johnny Winter tribute. And he has Joe Walsh and Billy from ZZ Top and Kenny Wayne Shepherd and Joe Bonamassa, and I could go on and on of great blues guitar players playing cuts with him, and that's going to be some record. Hopefully, that'll be out next April.
You're
So
seeing
life
a
is good.
real trend towards that too, Dave, where iconic artists like an Ozzy Osbourne's teaming up with a Post Malone, right? Somebody who's really hot right now and releasing a track, and it's creating this reintroduction of iconic artists to new generations. So
Yeah.
it's great to see you've capitalized on that. But it does seem to be an industry wide trend.
Well, it's the interesting thing that happened a couple of years ago is that when it came to Edgar, when I really started working hard on Edgar, there were a number of artists that said that Frankenstein was such an important part of their development in the music, that kids grew up to Frankenstein. Here was the first um, instrumental rock piece in 1973, and people said this has influenced me to do this or that. I mean, just the Foo Fighters, said, "Wow, that's the song that got us all off the mark." So I think that happens a lot. A musician will get to be 30, 35 and be successful, and then look back and see what affects them. And then if that artist is still around, like Edgar, they say, "Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that?" So it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing that happens. I hope it happens some more too. Edgar certainly had a lot of influence on people with the music that he put together. Free Ride, Dying to Live, Tobacco Road, and people go back to that and say, "Wow, this is what I listened to when I was 12 years old." So I want
Right.
to work with that band. What a wonderful thing.
What's the strongest geographical area for draw for Edgar these days? Is he big in the South? Is he big all like continentally all over the place? Like, where are you doing the bulk of his business?
It's across the U.S. Edgar gets a lot of casino work, which is great, and that's great because he delivers there. He was in the Ringo band for 5 years, so he had an impact as far as that was concerned. So there are a lot of markets where he does quite nicely. Chicago's a great blues market, and Edgar's songs are sometimes considered pop, just rock pop, but he does a great number of wonderful blues numbers. And so we've had him in Chicago, New York. He does good business. Up in Boston, he does good business. The Florida, when I go to Florida, we usually do a casino situation down there. He has opened for ZZ Top. He's opened for Alice Cooper. He's opened for not Richie Blackmore. A number of acts. I
Yes.
have a list of acts that he's opened for. And that puts him in a great position. You have to rebuild the opportunity to sell tickets to an audience if you sort of go away. And in the after the 2000s, he sort of went away. Edgar, he has a substantial way to live, and he didn't need to work that much. He finally put out a record around 2010, and that sort of reestablished him. And now we've been building his live appearances up since then pretty consistently. So it's been a 10-year run, getting better and better and better and better and better. There was a time a number of years ago where people would just throw a bunch of classic rock bands together, and in the same vein as Ringo and the All Stars, but without the the focus. And sometimes it would denigrate the artists that were in those packages. I think most of that's going away. There's still a lot of jukebox booking going on, but Edgar suffered that for a while, but now works on his own and really puts on a great show. He's something. He's just something. It's always
Yeah,
a pleasure.
the way that you rebuilt, or maximize the hard ticket business for Ringo is probably one of the templates that you can use in helping to rebuild the brand around Edgar at this point too.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I have, you have to be honest with yourself and your artist. If
Right.
the artist is worth 500 tickets, then you want to go into a venue that has that. So it looks sold out, feels sold out, and it is sold out, and it's exciting. If the artist is an opening act to Deep Purple, it just gives that opportunity for that artist to play in front of 40, 10,000 people, and that's what we've done with him, and it's been successful so far. We're really excited about these two new records that are going to come out. It's going to be something, and he's as enthusiastic as I am, which is a wonderful thing.
And it is so great to see you still charged up and so excited about the future in these days, and in the doom and gloom in the industry that's so predominant right now because it has taken such a hard hit. But you've been able to occupy your time in reconnecting with the family and enjoying the fact that you're not on the road every weekend, I'm sure. How have you been spending your time other than obviously the bookings you have set up for 2021?
Well, I have a pool at my house.
Yes. Beautiful house, by the way.
So I'm sorry.
What's it like? It's a beautiful house, by the way. I've seen some pictures of it. What's it like in LA today? It's got to be gorgeous.
78 degrees, slight breeze, gorgeous. It's spectacular. Just
Nice.
spectacular. My wife and I, we go back and forth from LA to New York. We have a place there too, and we're not allowed right now.
Right.
So it's hard to do business in New York if we're not allowed. But that also gives us the opportunity to see artists. Linda Eder lives in the New York area, and we are able to go back and forth and see the artists. My wife runs the management side of the business and has a bunch of actors who work on Broadway too, as well as in movies and TV. And so it's good to have that. But right now, it's impossible. We would like to get on a plane. We had tickets, but we can't. New York says, no, you're not coming here. You're from California. I understand it. And I wear a mask whenever I can, and I wear gloves and try to keep out of it. But it's difficult. It's difficult. The management side, Jim, has been the real fun side. I mean, Edgar Winter, we have a game, a video game that we're working on. And I can't say any more than that because of the non-disclosure, but that's an exciting project. And things keep moving, you know. If you love this business and you love the music, you just keep moving. And eventually people will be back in that 2,500, 3,000 seat venue, shoulder to shoulder, standing up, screaming when Ringo Starr comes out and sings Little Help from My Friends.
Oh, I love it. Well, listen, I want to wrap this up with some words of wisdom from you because you're always so full of words of wisdom. And I appreciate that about you.
Full of other things too. Don't
Hey, you said that, not me. To people who are looking to get into the business, someone who looks up to you, sees where you are today, sees what you've built, and understands that obviously there's a rich backstory there and a lot of hard work that was deployed to get you to where you are. That stuff seems to be obvious. Is there any other pearl of wisdom or advice that you would dispense to somebody who's in their late teens or 20s looking to get into the business as it stands today?
You got to be there. You got to be there. You got to be there. Right now, you can't go to a concert, so it's hard to be there. You can't go to a club. Tell them I said hello. But you can go into a studio. You can try to see what's going on radio. You can try to connect with artists. You can do everything you can to be there. You can't sit in front of your computer. You can't sit on your couch. You got to go. You got to, well, you can't shake hands, but you got to shake, touch elbows.
Eventually we'll be able to again, I think.
Yeah, I think it's important. You can be there electronically, digitally, and make sure that your input is there. If you can form those bridges, if you can make those bridges to artists and people, and don't be afraid to start at the bottom. You don't have to know Bill Graham. I got lucky, but I was there. I stuck my nose into the business. And if you don't do that, you're not going to get there. Most of the people I know who are really successful are the ones who were aggressive, got their nose in the business, made an effort to know the bands, know the business, know the fun of it, know the rehearsals, know the studios. Mark Geiger, for instance, always stuck his nose wherever he could go. I haven't spoken to him, but I hope he's doing okay. So that's my advice: is be there. Right. Be there as much as you can, And
in that process of just being present, not only are you going to have the opportunity to help people out when they need it, but you're also going to have the opportunity to learn. It's a great piece of advice because, I often say to people, someone goes, I want to be a tour manager. It's like, good, go out and go on tour for 2 weeks for somebody and call it your practicum. Don't ask to get paid. Cover your own expenses if you can afford it. And just go out and run cables and be in the space where you are useful. Exactly. And you will learn enough skills that at some point you'll probably get paid for it. But it's not going to happen right away.
Yep. Got to be there.
Yeah.
So, Jim, I look forward to seeing you soon. We're going to be doing a bunch of Ringo dates across Canada.
Really excited, really honored. Thank you, Dave. It's going to be a blast. And I look forward to you being up here when things are safe enough for you to travel with the show.
Fabulous Penticton. It really is a beautiful place. I look forward to it.
It is a great city. Awesome. Thanks again for doing this, brother.
You're welcome, Jim.
Take care.
Speak soon.
Bye.